The main goal of this lesson is to hone the skills of painting dark colors and various textures. Please keep in mind that the photo of the still life doesn't accurately represent what we're seeing in person. Not only does the camera fail to capture the full range of values and colors, it emphasizes light to dark contrasts, losing definition within light areas and within shadows. Also, this photo was taken from a slightly different point of view. Drawing and painting from life is not only the best way to learn, it is the only way to learn how to see, think, and create as an artist, in the classical sense of the word. Hopefully, you already watched part 1 drawing still life prior to painting. This part 2 will make better sense now. This demo was almost 4 hours long. The video is edited to explain all the main principles of painting with an emphasis on dark values. Alright, so what is the objective in this still life? What are we going to try to achieve?
Different values.
Different values. What kind of values dominate this still life?
Darker values.
Darker values. What breaks up the darkness?
The lighter, like the lemon.
Right, the lemon.
All the shiny spots on.
Correct. All the reflections are they are the main thing that breaks up otherwise dark values overall. And the dragon fruit.
It's a mid-tone.
Kind of mid, right. Usually what happens with red is that they are actually closer to some kind of medium gray in value, right? Mm-hmm. Red colors. Red colors are not all that light. So really what you have is the lightest of the light are the shiny spots, where we can pretty much, planning ahead how we're going to paint it, pretty much just leave the white paper for those spots and not touch it until the very end, right? The next thing is the lemon. Kind of need to be careful with it, not to go too dark on it. Next one is medium, is the dragon fruit, and the rest is pretty much dark, 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 right?
Besides the blue and
the blue sand in there, but it's also being in the back, being further away. So basically the background is very, very dark. The two glass, the bottle and the hourglass objects are blending more with the background, right? Mm-hmm. And the lemon being forward in front of us is also being of the lightest value of all the objects, not to count reflections. Put all the masking on the shiny spots, right? But the masking is still kind of drying, so I'm going to start with other objects for now. So let's establish our lemon color. I'm just gonna quickly come in here and give it a good, healthy amount of yellow, right? Mm-hmm. And as it goes into the shadow, I'm going to come and already give it a little green. Same green to my yellow. But why am I doing, well, I picked up blue, but I'm adding it to my yellow. Why? Because all this blue is affecting how that shadow looks, right? And so I'm doing it somewhat wet and wet, and mostly where I'm seeing the darkest. Okay. This is already drying, so I can leave it alone for now. Let's do our dragon fruit. Dragon fruit. Start again with the warmer. I'm choosing my permanent rose, and I'm going over everything first, by the way.
Just one color?
Permanent rose. What I mean is I'm going over the light and shadows. Okay? As of right now. Permanent rose is warmer than the other color I have, which I'm planning to use. So my light stops right around here, and my, what is it, quinacridone is cooler. So if I go over the shadow with quinacridone, it already starts to give it a cooler appearance. And as you can see, I'm already establishing the value with this. While my rose is still wet, I'm going to give it a little warmer hue. And while it's still wet, I'm going to give my shadow a bit of the blue. I kind of separated them. And what do I see on some of those tips? On some of those tips I see a bit of a different hue, like this tip here has a different color and hue. And this is my Indian yellow with a little bit of green that came from the lemon. Going over this quinacridone and all this redness in here, it actually gives it a bit of a greener, browner hue. Did you notice?
Mm-hmm.
And it's wet and wet, so it's blending nicely. I see that actually some of that is also on this tip. It stands out brightly, it picks up some of the light. So I'll give this a light pass. Some of it is here. And while I'm at it, and I have this on my brush, I have this color, I'm gonna come and give this tip the same end. And those ends are, they're hard to tell what kind of color they have, but you just need to hit the right value and worry about the color itself kind of later. Right now, be sure you simply get the right value. This here being very dark, the tip is kind of brownish, greenish. We have so much green going on in here, that if you give that brownish, greenish hue, it will work. No problem. Alright, so you see the light and shadow is kind of wishy-washy, it's not precise. That's fine. We just need to establish our main color value relationship, right? Let's do this big green area. That is kind of like, that's an interesting juicy green, isn't it?
Why are you choosing to do that area next?
What?
Why are you choosing to do that area?
Still waiting for this to dry in here.
Okay.
I have such thick layer of masking that I don't want to drag it with a brush and then ruin the brush, ruin everything. So this green is sort of deep grass green, forest green, you would say, right? And in the light it looks much yellower, and the shadow looks much bluer. So what we need is to mix like plenty of one color to start with, so when we need to, we can push it more toward the yellow or more toward the blue. And to wet it, just enough wetting. Just so I have enough time to do my wet and wet work. Alright, let's try it here. looks alright. Don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
No cake color? No cake color to start with. So first time I will go around my hourglass. First time. Because I know I am not going to be able to get my I'm not going to be able to get it as dark as I need to. But this line where my dry paper for the hourglass connects with the greenery of the background, this line is going to sit there helping me to, for now, keep the hourglass separated. Also pay attention to how much paint I mix. I mixed a lot of paint for this and I'm already running out. See where it wasn't quite enough pigment on my brush, it came out larger, so just while it's still wet, I'm just adding it in. Might as well. See how this is forming like a darker line here? It's going to help separate, especially in our initial stages. We'll separate our dragon fruit from the darkness of the background. We're gonna go very, very dark in here. It's gonna be very dark. So which two colors did I mix for this greenery?
Indian yellow and, well...
Indian yellow, correct.
Okay, Indian yellow and Windsor blue or Prussian.
Prussian.
Okay, because I know Windsor is a little bit, well, it's a little
Windsor would make it a little, louder.
It makes me think it's more like a sea-ish kind of green.
Yeah.
Prussian is more
Dumping more paint in here, more pigment. Why? Light, little light, more dark, right? While I'm at it and it's all wet, I'm gonna put in more of this shadow here. The beginning of forming this shadow. Alright, let's do the blue, the darker blue.
Isn't it more of a purple blue?
Yeah, it's leaning toward purple, especially when you have this green and this very dark blue bottle, right? Even the bottle, it's more ultramarine blue, and this has, you notice how it looks a little purplier in the light and then little ultramarine blue in the shadows, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think the green that you have on the wall right now is a little too, well, I think it's too dull right now.
Where?
On the wall.
On the wall, yeah. We're gonna go over that. We're gonna make it richer. This is the first pass, building up the values. Remember, first worry about the values, right? So I'm taking my Prussian, lots and lots of Prussian blue, and I'm adding quinacridone to it a little bit to push it a little more toward the purple. And the good thing is we have all the sides we're not going to be using that I can experiment on. Is that a good color for that fabric? Imagine that in the light, for the light areas, I will get even more quinacridone to it for the lighter. And for the darker, I'll go even deeper and bluer. How's that? Does that look similar to that, the effect of that fabric?
Yeah.
Okay,
On the
so
light, I think it's even more
Even more purpley. Okay.
Even kind of goldenish in some.
Mm-hmm. So we also need to pay attention to the difference in blue because the bottle is blue. So we want to make sure we get the proper difference, right? So it doesn't look all the same.
For the second cloth color, are you using like Windsor or Prussian?
Also Prussian.
Okay. Are you gonna use? Then you're gonna use Windsor on the little bottle then.
Probably, yeah. I'll take Windsor and I'll push it more toward ultramarine. It's very tempting to just go over the bottle, but I'm afraid I will not see my drawing under all this depth of blue. And the first pass I will go around it carefully to keep my shape. Later I will probably start going painting over the bottle as well. Alright, foreground. What do you notice?
You're at more purple.
Mm-hmm. Change of hue slightly. And because it's in the foreground, it's totally fine to play with your hues. Okay, totally, absolutely play with your hues. Don't be shy. I don't want to lose my shadow in here, this side of the table. I want to make sure I don't forget about it, don't lose the direction of it. So there we go. While it's wet, I'm indicating that. So even if I can't get the darkness as well, at least what I'm getting out of this is change in color. Many times just the change in color itself is already good enough. You know something else is going on there, and you come back and paint it. Make it cooler, make it warmer, whatever you need to make, you make it. I don't want to go too purple in here, okay? Alright, so this is so far as much darker, and at least it's not a super loud blue out of the bottle, right? I mean out of the tube. So still lots of work to be done. Let's see what we can do with the hourglass now. How about we come back to the purple, to the green. Come back to the green. How about we make it richer, much richer than before. How about that? See, it's cooler now, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is that sort of darker area here. And now we can go over our hourglass. Oops, here I went over sand, wrong place. Right behind there. A little hue change. Add a little Windsor to the mix. Push it a little toward a different hue. How would a little bit of a Windsor look right behind our... So I started with one blue and now I'm throwing in the other. Big areas get covered up quickly. Work on the details within those areas later.
Careful the paint doesn't drip into the dragon plate.
This one? Oh yeah, I see it's sagging.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to keep this clean. It's the lowest spot in there, right? So it wants to sink in here. I'm gonna make sand now. Definitely Windsor blue, but maybe not yellow, but perhaps more like Indian yellow. I'll do the shadow first.
I think it's the, besides the bottle, it's the bluest
Yeah.
in there.
It's more like turquoise blue, right?
Yeah, but very turquoise-ish blue. Or very blue turquoise.
Mm-hmm. Not too bad because it's the lemon's rolling it away anyways, so that edge will have to be softer. The only thing will make it softer later, not right away. Okay, the sand, that's more in the light. It's more in the light, but it's further back, so less contrasts. See what I did? Went over light and shadow together with the same color. Blue or purpley blue fabric needs to be darker. We need to go over the hourglass. We need to get this darker, right? So the next pass of blue I'm going to do is I'm gonna go over the bottle as well. Also, I want to be careful not to go too purple on that fabric. See? Don't want to go too purple and not have it combine well. You're watching what I do with my palette. I have my Prussian blue next to this quinacridone, and when I need to push the hue more toward quinacridone, I grab more quinacridone, and it makes it warmer purpley. See? Mm-hmm. When I need to, and that is without doing much changes, when I need more blue, I just grab more blue and a little bit quinacridone. Now I need a little more quinacridone. I grab quinacridone. Understand? Mm-hmm. You can do the same thing. Where do we want the light to be showing a little bit more? The light is kind of going like this.
Right on the edge.
Hmm?
Right on the edge.
Mm-hmm. While it's wet, you can easily help your folds happen like this. See, I'm sort of shaping my fabric, but I'm not going into a lot of very precise details. You see that, right? Mm-hmm. Look, grab some green into it. Why?
It looks a little bit greenish.
Mm-hmm. Why? What I did is that there is some reflective light on some of the folds within the shadow, and it looks much cooler and kind of washed up. Change of value means change of hue, right? You see value change, if it gets lighter, it means the hue changes. And that's what I did. I changed it with a little bit of green I mixed for that. Okay, I'm going to get my shadows established. The darkest of what I got. And I can't even say that they look very dark blue. They look blue, but they are so dark. They're starting to border on black. So what two colors do you think are used for this?
Maybe Windsor and or Prussian and Indian red.
I am using Indian red as a close guess, very close, but it's not Indian red. It's praline maroon.
Oh, well, I don't know that one. I don't use that one.
You don't have it?
Yeah, I don't have it.
Okay, I'll squeeze some for you. It makes a wonderful range of blue and browns that are cooler browns. So you probably thought, we can't go any darker. It's already so dark. And then suddenly, what have I done here? I have gone darker. And look how the sand is actually starting to stand out. I see that right here, it kind of like disappears. There are just some kind of irregularities in there, and then it picks up a whole bunch of stronger reflections. Goes along right to here or so. Here it's very dark, which is why all those reflections stand out so strongly. And right here I see it as darker. Right now what I'm concentrating is light and dark. Strictly what I see that is darker and what I see that is lighter. See? And what shapes they make. So praline maroon is a brown, basically brown color, that also has enough of the redness to it, more like a maroon type of redness. That's why it looks so good with the blue. This is much darker here, right? So the changes between light and shadow back there are so subtle that they are very hard to notice. The thing is when you get so many colors, so many dark colors in one place, the changes end up being so tiny, so subtle, that it's easy to play around with them. Okay, what am I seeing? Okay. What I'm seeing is that right behind here, it's a little lighter. Right behind here, it's a bit darker. Then the bottle is even darker. Actually, right behind the bottle, right here, the fabric is lighter, so I'm going to lighten it up, connect it with this. Here it's a little lighter, I'm going to leave it like that. Can work on the bottle and just a little bit shadow from the bottle, shadow on the fabric. I can just barely see what I was drawing in here. That's why it's okay to shade, especially for a still life like that. It's okay to shade a whole lot with your pencil. And that has actually been slightly lighter. Alrighty. Okay, the main thing's been established except for the bottle. Let's go and do the hard work on the bottle. What do we see as the absolute darkest places in the bottle? How does the hue of the bottle look?
Could be a little bit more purple, but not as purple as the background, obviously.
Okay. See right here, the background is dripping into my bottle. I'm gonna leave it drip for now. On purpose. Why would I let it drip? Tell me.
So it's sort of blend in with the background.
So. Remember when I was painting the background in here? How I said that right here, the bottle looked darker than the background. Darker than the dark blue cloth in the background. That's why I'm coming back here right now and going over it again. But you see how the hue of the bottle does look different than the fabric, right?
Yeah.
That's the main thing. The main thing is not to achieve precisely the color. Main objective is to achieve something that tells the viewer that this is one kind of blue and that is another kind of blue. That's the main objective here. And to tell that this is actually a glass vessel, this is something else, but now it all looks dark enough. Here I'm starting to indicate a few reflections. This is a glass vessel, it's reflective, and the way I am achieving the different hue is by doing what?
Using different kinds of blues.
One blue, mostly one kind of blue to paint the fabric, and another blue to paint the bottle. And values, most important thing. Values, proper values. Even darker here. If I lose a little bit of the shape of my bottle, it is not a big deal. Not in this exercise, right? In this exercise, the most important thing is values. And you see, I've gone over this, right? And it looked like you can't get any darker. How are you going to have any reflections in it? And for some reason I keep coming back and I keep managing to stick in more reflections just by going over layer after layer, right? Another layer of paint, more reflection, right? Mm-hmm. And all I'm doing is I'm just looking at it and saying, like, really, where is it the darkest? In this area, what is darkest? Right here. And it's shaped like this. And it kind of goes up the side here. Like this. And what else is dark? And then right here, it's dark right here, going toward this reflection. And then what happens? It wraps around. This wraps around. But then right here, it becomes darkest. And right here it stays lighter. You know what? It's the hourglass reflecting. Okay. It's pretty dark right next to the fabric. Why? Because the fabric is so dark, it's reflecting a lot of the / not able to pick up any light. Reflecting shadows, which can also be called not picking up enough light. Some of it is a little stronger than what I see, alright? Right now I'm like really looking close to all the reflections and I'm like really making them way more contrasting. I'm establishing that, but I can always come back later and darken and lighten what I need by a little bit. So while I'm here, the fun thing, because my paint is all this dark blue paint in the bottle is so wet, so nice, and I'm seeing my sand reflect in it. So I'm like, aha, now's my chance. Now's my chance to go and give this a little bit of a turquoise blue hue. This doesn't look turquoise blue, right? It just looks like I picked up some of the paint. But that's okay, because now I cleaned it up a little bit stronger. Now I'm gonna come and make my delicate turquoise blue. I'm gonna come and very carefully add it. The hue is changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look as bright in the actual bottle, but that means what? It means that it gives us plenty of room to give it the color we want. And what am I doing right here? I'm going over my darker blue with the same exact color as I did for reflection, but because there was a little bit of yellow, it now looks like it's the lemon, right? You just bring your lemon yellow, just lemon yellow, go over your darker blue, look what it does. The hue changed, suddenly the bottle is reflecting the lemon. Couldn't do it right here because there was so much darker blue in there, and this is too bright right now. But for now I'll let it dry, and then I'll come back when it's dry, and when it's dry it will accept the paint much more readily. So for now I'll just continue with a few darker spots right here. Where do I see darker? I see them here, over here. You know what? I'll do a little hue change, just play with it a bit. Much more purple right here. And I'll do a little hue change, Praline Maroon, Quinacridone, and Windsor Blue. And I'll make this even darker, even way darker than even the shadow on the fabric there. That's what that Praline Maroon can do for your shadows with blue. It's just amazing. Okay, so these reflections are darker. I will work on them later. Right now I just want them there because they are very helpful in telling me what's going on in the area. You understand that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You can totally first emphasize something much stronger, come back and work it over later. You don't have to hit it right from the beginning. It's not necessary. Okay, I'm gonna change hue once again. I see a little darker spot. My Windsor, and in this case I'm using rose, not Quinacridone. And I see that there is this like darker, but I want it to look slightly different. So it's darker, but it's now a little more rosy. Right? Because I've added rose, it's a little more rosy. That's good. And I will come like right in here and repeat a little rosiness. And I'll come get my Praline Maroon again mixture, and I'll get the top of this bottle very carefully, because this is also fairly dark area. Okay, so I've gone to a lot of detail in the bottle. I better let it go for a little bit and also let it dry. Let's work on our nice little lemon. Okay, the lemon needs to build up its color. It is not all the same yellow everywhere either. So I'm just plain looking at some subtle nuances in my lemon. Where is it actually lightest? Where is it slightly darker? Where is it more lemony yellow? Where is the yellow starts to go a little warmer? So I see that there is a little ridge in this, like a little ridge here that is a much lighter yellow. Right here, right? The absolute brightest yellow is on the tip and right on this ridge coming down toward the tip and right in here. These are the absolute brightest portions of the lemon. everything else starts to become part of the shadow. It also kind of plays between warmer and darker, cooler, greener areas. But you don't want to overdo the green. But you definitely need to have a difference between the brightness of light and the darkness of this. And this purpley blue fabric, it reflects in the lemon. So right here is where I see a little bit of the warmer reflecting within the shadow. Right here I see it a little warmer, so I'll add it in now, so it's a bit orangier. And right here I see it is a bit warmer going away on this edge. This whole edge is kind of like still warm glow, but it's darker value going away from us. There's just nothing you can do. If it's going away from you, something has to change. And that something usually is the hue and value. I'm grabbing some of my purpley from the bottle. Why would I do something like this? Because I'm seeing how strongly this blue affects my lemon. To where right here it's still more leaning toward the green. It's kind of going, the shadows are facing a little more into this open space, but as it comes down here, it's looking toward the fabric. And the fabric has a lot of purpliness to it. Now, remember, it's too easy to overdo, so we don't want to overdo. We just want to indicate the change in hue, but try and maintain the pleasing color. Okay, that's too blue, so get a little more of those. And again, we have to compare our values to the fabric and everything else. Too green right now, but I need this before I go over with purple. The reason is that I'm trying to keep my colors less muddy. If I try to mix all of them right on the palette, they'll come off as too muddy. And I don't want them muddy. So now I just need to connect this shadow to the light, so make it more rolling, more round. Just connecting it right now, because it makes it easier to see that this is actually not as light as the other part. It's definitely lighter right here, and it's definitely lighter right here. But as it comes down to here, it starts to get a little bit darker. These are very, very delicate changes. These are not very strong changes in values. So you have to think of it as being super careful in here. How is it looking from the distance?
Looks good. I'm just worried it'll get to be too dark.
We can lift up some colors if it gets too dark. and it will help us blend all these shadows as well. Little, just a tiny bit, a little bit orangier in here, but not in here. I think the effect this fabric has on this lemon, that it almost gives it rosy reflections in some places. Dragon fruit, so we just need to look at what's going on between light, shadow, and how the color changes. If anything, whatever we painted under, we're gonna leave it there. Like right here, I see that there is a lighter area built up. I'm leaving this lighter, giving it a darker hue, darker redder. This little ridges where those little pointy parts come off, they're actually good to practice on. They kind of break up the roundness, and you can use them to your advantage. And what do I mean by that? So when we need to paint something dark, we can go easily right under here and not touch the thing, right? Then we can come in here and paint this more of a shadow area, and it goes all the way here and kind of this way, and just leave the very edge and then blend it with the shadow. Okay, so now we're building up the shadow. This one goes right under. Okay, for now we're keeping, this one is completely in the shadow. For now we're keeping it that way. Come around here. Okay, I see that there is mostly shadow, and then there is like a little reflection in here, and I think it's from my lamp. So I'll leave the reflection like this. And then I see that my darker color is right here as well. Does something like this, and then it blends with the rest of the fruit. And right here also the color changes and the value changes. It's becoming darker, slowly becoming darker. This is staying lighter. And another good thing is, like, okay, here it's definitely much darker. Much darker. And this whole leafy portion stays lighter until it goes into this light or into this shadow. This one has a little bit of light, goes into this shadow. And then there's some little irregularity here, right? I see something a little lighter, something a little darker. And it's almost like, you know what, you can just come in here, say it's like all darker, and do just like this kind of treatment. Like, we don't know what's going on there exactly. All we know is that the skin starts going very bumpy and different and kind of corrugated and all. Right under here it's much darker. Right under here I see a little bit of a like darker outline and shadow. It blends with the shadow that goes deep under the dragon fruit. This shadow is a little darker here, then it becomes lighter, and then it becomes darker again. I'm seeing that it's like darker right in this area, and I think it's like having a little bit of a lighter, slightly lighter area here, so I'm changing toward more red again. This one has a little more darker, cooler blue. I look not totally blue, just a little blue. Okay, I'm gonna get some of my quinacridone. Just quinacridone itself, because it's already cooler, it can do a lot. So I'm gonna go right here, and right here around this reflection, around here like this, and around here. That also has a little bit of darkness. What else do we see? Purple here. When it turns way under toward the fabric, it starts to pick up a lot of the darkness from the fabric right here. And this edge of our dragon fruit is so hard to tell. And it's hard to tell apart, especially from this shadow here. And this shadow here better also be affected by the dragon fruit. Is shadow affected?
Yeah.
Yeah. And also look how nice this deep purple looks next to this yellow for the lemon. Right. Okay, I will go and do the occlusion shadow later. Right now, I want to tune down that greenish, brownish tip here. It's there, but it's in the shadow, so we need to darken it. We just need to make sure it has enough greenish orangey-ish look to it. Is my dragon fruit ready for that dark occlusion shadow? Probably not yet, but it's getting close. Praline maroon. Let's see what praline maroon can do for our dragon fruit deep dark shadows. Looks good. Just gonna blend with it. Okay, let's finish this right here. I love this little tip. Gotta be careful, very carefully. It's a little wrinkly in there, right? So I'll emphasize my wrinkles, and it's also a shadow. And it's a kind of shadow that spreads out way toward this tip. There's a little purpliness to it. And see where it's the darkest? That's right in here, right at this very tip. And then there's a little bit of a crispy, lighter edge. It's like dry, and it's very close to white, but it's not white. And because of that, I'm gonna leave it white for now, work on it later. I'm gonna emphasize those little bits of white that I left there on purpose, and I'm going to emphasize my dry little greenish bit, which is also, by the way, has lighter, darker areas in it. It turns toward light, away from light, and it's beautiful. See? Light, dark, dark, with very little tips of edge, whitish edge, and a little bit of the drier area. So in this still life, my dry bits of edges are getting kind of warmer greenish hue, almost toward the orange, right? In this whole context, it looks just right. Just to make sure, I'm going to come around here and emphasize it once again. Emphasize the beauty and the grace of this little bit. Do you agree with me? Do you? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty beautiful. Okay. Now I'm gonna just grab it darker. hue change, so it's not all the same. Here it's a little warmer. Change of hue. How am I going to paint the same green but make it look darker behind glass? Plein maroon. Because what we want to do is we want to paint it looking not as strong of a green. Plein maroon will tune it down just enough so it doesn't look too much like bright green. Because once it's coming through the glass, it can't be as bright, right? Things have to change. It can't be the same. The color loses its vibrancy coming through the glass. So basically what I'm seeing is like something very dark, sort of green, but the color is so hard to tell. Here it's probably the darkest. It's not quite as dark, but there's still plenty of darker areas. Gonna change hue. Okay, and I'm gonna go on the other side, and right here I'm seeing that right here it's much more visible, the bottle from the background. And to enrich my hue within the bottle, I'll give this a little bluer. And right here where they're connecting, gonna deepen that. So the transition between the green and blue, dark blue fabric, is very hard to tell, and that's totally fine. See how I'm leaving it just like even interrupted lighter green in there? Mm-hmm. Just so that it totally goes pushed into the shadow. Now I can come in here and do a little more work. The fun part of making it look like glass is finding all the reflected areas. Right here I'm seeing the dragon fruit reflecting. Gonna pick it up. It's not a super bright reflection, but it's there, and it's good to capture it. There's a lot going on in here, so I'm going to leave it somewhat wishy-washy right now. And there's a bunch of things going on the top here. And I'm going to also kind of just gonna push this back. Working on the hourglass, I punched this up a little bit here. This almost disappears, so I'm gonna go over it a little bit more with the darker pass, like this. I worked a little bit on the sand, as you can see. Added lighter reflections here, darker shadows in there. And while I'm looking at it, this can come up and be a little darker. I don't want my sand to be too contrasting, right?
Contrasting? What do you mean by that?
The sand inside the hourglass?
To the same?
Too contrasting. Like strong contrasts between light, shadow, color. Why wouldn't I want my sand to be more contrasting?
It's more blurry.
And it's inside the hourglass, right?
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be dealt with delicately. Alright, now that I've been looking at this hourglass for so long, okay, I tried to put in this reflection. I don't know what this long reflection from. Is it our dragon fruit? But I do see now the lemon reflecting right in here. So I'm gonna come in and do my lemon. And the lemon reflection breaks up this light and shadow in the sand. And I always like that, because when you have something like this break it up, that means you can see the surface of the glass. And you should always look for those neat little things like that. Reflections that break up what's inside the glass. Okay, of course the lemon is not just pure yellow anymore when it's reflecting in there. It's darker value, and it's only a hint of being yellow. It also is orangey almost. Where else can we do some reflections? Right here. I see that right here, this shadow almost blends with the shadow on the back of it. And I'm going to make it disappear. Some of this reflection right here blends with the background. So I will darken it right now. Some of these reflections, they seem to be almost like warmer, leaning a little toward the red. That's very interesting. Why would they be leaning toward the red? On the green side, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk over there and see what's causing this reflection by blocking certain things. This long stretched out reflection is actually the bright light from the dragon fruit. So why would I need to worry about it? Why do I need to figure out what is causing that very bright reflection?
Because it might affect other parts of the glass.
I need to know what color to give it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at it, I see that it's sort of a little bit reddish. But is it yellowish that looks reddish next to all of the other colors? Or what? What is causing that? Well, what's causing it is the dragon fruit. And if the dragon fruit is causing it, then I can mix a very nice clean rose and maybe yellow, yeah, because it's not too purpley. And then it will look like it's really a dragon fruit. The reflection is very mild. That's why I'm struggling to see what color it is, except that I see that it's warmer. But it also doesn't need to be very strong. That's the thing. It just needs to have just a little bit of the hue. It will make a huge difference overall. Huge. I'm gonna take off some of this because I want to see my true values. So I'm taking it off at this point because I painted enough to where I know I will not mess them up. But what I want it for is I want this to look the brightest, right? And these reflections are not as brightest because I'm working on so many of the other reflections that I need to get it to the point to where I definitely don't overdo my reflections too light or too dark. So this is the whitest, this is the next whitest one. See how after I've lifted that color, now this kind of looks dull because I'm comparing that, I'm comparing this. Oh, it doesn't look dull. Now it's starting to look like fun little reflection. I'll make it a little redder toward this end because it is probably picking up some of the less bright light. I'll make it yellower toward the upper because it's picking up brighter, lighter portion of the dragon fruit. So tempting to go and clean this up. So tempting. I just keep wanting to come back, fix that. I don't want to fix it too much. Then my dragon fruit reflection here is darker. This one is a little bit lighter, and this is super light. And it's still staying this way, but I'm going to punch it up a bit. There's my lemon. Lemon, dragon fruit, lemon. I think this is also dragon fruit right here. No, it can't be dragon fruit. It has to be something else. It's too big. Is it the window?
I think it's the board.
Board. Oh, the wall. I'm going to pick up a few other little reflections that I see that will help make it look like a bunch of things reflecting in that glass. See, the fun thing about watercolor is that you can do things like this. I see that I need to punch up this reflection here a whole lot. It's good I didn't paint over it too much. I can erase it almost to the white, but not quite. And I don't want to erase it to the white because it's light that's like very distorted coming through a lot of this curvature of the glass and other things. And then it's becoming milder here. See what I've done? Like I punched up this light. I am seeing that in this reflection that I'm brightening up a little bit. And I'm brightening it up only to a degree because once I go over with another paint, by the way, this reflection becomes very mild here, so I'm going to leave it like that for now. I'm seeing a color change. Right here it's easy, right here it's green. I'm looking at it, it has this pale green look. But I'm looking at it here, it's very bright, almost yellow here. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna take very clean. I'm gonna go like in a new area that hasn't been muddied up. Gonna give this a little yellow, this a little yellow. Where's this coming from? Have another blue intruding in here. Gives me a chance to soften up the edges. Sunshine. And then I'll start with this yellow on the reflection to echo the sunshine. But as I go away, it starts to turn a little bit greener. I think it's because this reflection is caused by, well, it's the warping of the glass, but it's actually this fabric that is bouncing off of that, and it might be a little bit of the hourglass sand, because as right here I see it more yellow or green. As I come up here it looks a little more turquoise. So I'm taking my hourglass paint, I mean the sand, and changing the hue toward the, to echo that. And I'm seeing that actually very similar things happening on the other side. That this is more of a turquoise sand reflection. I think I'm seeing another reflection, a very little bit of the dragon fruit right in here somewhere. For some reason this whole section looks warmer. Warmer to the point where it looks a little more orangey. See what I'm doing? Doesn't that look good from the distance?
Yeah.
I'm seeing that this looks like a bit lighter, so like it's a little bit dustier or something. But not greener, bluer. Gonna darken this corner now. The fabric is much darker overall, and while this is a darkest portion in the shadow here, this is a little lighter. It still isn't that light. Just shows that the very first pass was far from what our actual value will end up being like. So the green fabric in the front on the table is not as light as all this. It's much darker. It's a little closer to something over here, so we can safely darken it. And now that I'm looking at this first pass, I'm gonna go and give it a little more, a little deeper green, shaping up a little bit in terms of nuances in the light and shadow here. I'm going to add a little preline maroon to my blue to get this shadow. It's very dark shadow right under the dragon fruit, and preline maroon will make this blue appear greenish with a little redder hue, a little hint of redder color as if it reflects a little bit of the dragon fruit. Same thing, I'm adding a little preline maroon right here to this shadow. Just give it a little redder appearance where it gives it strongest reddish purplish reflection of the darker portion of the dragon fruit. Bluer, colder, and darker near the shadow where it is meeting the light, and much lighter everywhere else. May need to go over it once again, but I'll let this dry and see what it looks like for now. This, I think, is starting to get closer to what we need, so it's probably gonna work. I just wanna darken this shadow. Also, what I'm seeing is that this big dark area is not the same in value and color. Some are slightly lighter areas, some are a little darker areas. So right here I see there's a little bit lighter, and I had a little preline maroon on here. I'm gonna get preline maroon with my Indian yellow. Darker, warmer, gives it a little warmer, greener hue to it. I want this transition into the lighter area to be much softer. Here the shadow light change is a little sharper. Here it's a little softer. And we don't want to have a sharp edge between the table and the background anyways. because it's slightly further away. The sharper contrasts between light and shadow would be on the lemon, some on the dragon fruit. They would also want to be here in the fabric, but the fabric, while it's closest to us, it's dark. We want our eyes, the viewer's eyes, to go like past this and concentrate more on the beauty of the fruit, glass objects, and the fact how they stand out against the darkness of the deep colors in the background. Alright, I need to go back and finish my little reflections right here. They're not all that bright right here. So I'll darken them now like this. And then I'll come back and darken them a little bit more later. This is the first pass. I did that before to where this seemed like slightly greener hue to that reflection. This looked a little more turquoise. I think the turquoise may have somehow be picking up this sand light reflection bouncing off of it. Perhaps that's what is happening. And some of this is a little more cooler sort of turquoise. I am saying turquoise because when I look at this area and I compare it to this, it looks like it's like a milder wash, like a grayish, same approximate value, maybe a little lighter than this, with a little grayish hue to it, but same kind of same color seems to be popping up there. And as it goes away, it gets darker. So it's lightest right in here, and everywhere else it starts to get darker and milder in value. Then this one here starts to become a little warmer. So when you look at things for quite some time, objects like this, you start to notice the minute changes in value. And when you see a little change in value, you start looking for a change in color. And when you know that the color changes with value, that the two are not separate, the two are completely related, they cannot go one without the other, then you start looking for what color it is. If you can't figure it out, you start looking for what's causing it. And when you find what's causing it, you can better figure out what color to give it. And the more you observe something, the more you pay attention to all of those changes, the more you paint accurately and also artistically. You can say, I know this is what's going on. I see the value color change. I see that this is cooler, this is warmer. Now that I see that, how do I make it look even more interesting? Instead of just some boring brown color that you see that it's warm, it's a little, perhaps you see it as a little brownish, knowing that you have this in here, such juicy red purples. You say to yourself to keep everything within this palette and interesting looking. I am not gonna make it look brown. I'm going to make it look perhaps a little rosy, perhaps a little purpley, and maybe a little orangey. And so what happens is that because you already have a bunch of these colors down on the paper, you already have all these greens and blues in here. Once you go over with your brighter color like this, it's gonna combine with some of your paint that's already there, and it's not gonna look pure pink or pure rosy color or all that red. It's only gonna look like a hint of it, and it may even change to look a little more brownish, and that's all you want. You just want a little change in color in that area. And so this reddish orangish color is going to be combining with your other colors. The hue will not be what you picked up off your palette once you painted on here, and the hue is also going to be affected by all the layers. Darkness, for instance, you have darker layers, you will probably end up painting it a bit darker than what you picked up off the palette. You just got to know this, got to know that this is going to happen. Count on it in a way. Experiment also. Alright, finish this couple of reflections here while we're still here in the area. Might as well. They are bright, but they are cool. They come from the distant lights. We already figured out those are my reflections from the lamps that are shining on my work here. Two huge lights hanging above. They're bright, but they're cool, and we need to make them look light enough in value compared to the sand in the background, bright enough but not as bright as this where it's from direct light from the lamp that shines on this still life. In light of that, I'm giving them a little bit of the same cooler, bluer hue, and comparing this to here because those are the same thing, just shaped slightly differently. Okay, I'm gonna go fix this reflection to look a little warmer. I see it's looking a bit warmer. It actually looks, this reflection here, it actually looks like a smudge. It might be some fingerprints that when I was setting it up, it smudged. It might be, that's what I'm seeing. And because it's on the surface, it's reflecting slightly warmer light. And since it's reflecting a warmer light, I'm picking up a little bit of my yellow and rose and very carefully changing the hue of it to be warmer. And if it's not enough, if it's too much blue still left in there and the hue is not changing enough, I can pick up more of the previous paint layer and basically erase some. And the more I pick up this paint, the less greenish blue I have down there, the more my reflection will look like the color I want. Because you gotta account for the fact that the colors that are already present there will be affected. The warmer yellow or rosier going over the blue will not give you exactly the same thing. So for example, right here, if I show you, this is the color I mixed to put over that. Mild, lots of water, very little pigment. This is what it looks like here because of all the green layers down below there. Alright, gonna darken this a bit more because it's not as bright. Okay, I'm seeing a little bit of a reflected light here. Something on the surface, probably dust, is making this area close to this shiny reflected highlight a bit lighter. So I'm not using my square flat brush. I'm using a pointy one. You have probably noticed already that throughout this painting I've been using both. The flat sable brush will take up color more readily with the edge. It's like erasing lines, erasing this reflections. It's good for that. This one will erase them much softer, much milder erasing. And because I'm seeing like a very fuzzy little vague reflection in this area, I'm using the brush that gives me vague erasing. not sharp, not linear, but big. And again, I'm seeing that it is not just cooler blue or greener, it is a warmer one. So I'm going back to my rosier color, and I'm going to give it just a little rosier hue. Just enough to tune down the greenness and the bluishness in there, and say that this is something else. Alright, also when I'm doing that, I'm very careful not to overdo it because of values. Because the values, if you make your reflections that are not caused by the direct light, the highlights, your reflections competing with highlights, it's bad. You're overdoing it. You're missing the target. So now, in light of everything else that's painted, the fruit definitely looks like it needs to be stronger contrasts, stronger colors. The dragon fruit right up in front here, even in the light I see that it has stronger colors. But this time I'll work a little bit around my details here. Before I went in and just covered pretty much everything. Now I'm going to be more careful with my detail. Give it the chance to stand out more. And you know, you just need to get close to enough detail here. Do you have any questions while why I'm painting, what colors I'm choosing, why I'm doing what I'm doing, what I'm seeing, and so on? Do you have any questions about it?
I think I understand everything so far.
Okay. You want to just sit down and start drawing?
Okay, where do I do that though? Where do I set it up?
Right here. I'm close to being finished. I'll just keep plowing away at this and videotaping, but because I'm talking so little now, I'm doing so much of the just work to concentrate and finish it. So remember how I was saying I have it first a little stronger in terms of light, shadows, and so on. Now I can come and soften it up just where I need it. Just lift off a little bit of color exactly where you need it and leave it in places where you don't need it. And all of your transitions between light and shadow, because of that, end up more smoothed out. And your lemon starts to look more realistic. See how I'm bringing the very nose, the pointy portion of the lemon forward, right? Mm-hmm. And there is like delicate, tedious kind of work. The thing is that because I left the brightest spots with just like 1 or 2 passes, and I covered others with some value. Now that I come to erase, lift up some, I end up lifting up so little bit that it only lightens the darker area a little bit. And that creates a better value than you can hope to paint from the start. See what I mean? From the start, if you were sitting here trying to achieve the same thing, you would be straining here with little areas that are like, oh, what am I seeing? It's so tiny. How do I get the value just right in this tiny little spot? See what I mean? But because you've already established some of the value areas, you can now come and lift up just a little bit, and it ends up creating those nuanced values. And if you lift up too much of the color, you can come and restore it. The main thing is the areas that you definitely know are going to be the brightest, you don't want to touch those from the beginning. You want to be careful with what you do with the light and shadow and so on.